The next big print is going to come when something breaks, maybe the bond market, maybe the stock market, whatever it is, and the government realizes that they've got to, or else everything's going to collapse. That's coming. Outside date on that is 18 months. Inside date on that's tomorrow. Medium date on that, 6 months maybe, 6 to 9 months. I think when that occurs, Bitcoin will go and exceed the power law. We'll get a 2 standard deviation move above, and we'll pump to 300, 350. So my view is at some point we will be back, quote unquote, in crisis conditions. And then that will justify the next big print that will take the government, balance sheet from, the 7 trillion that they managed to reduce it to down from, say, 9. The next one will take us up to 20 or more.
Renowned sound money advocate and portfolio manager Lawrence Lepard is predicting a massive increase in Bitcoin prices within the next 2 to 3 years. According to Lepard, who has been warning about the dangers of the government's reckless spending and the constant devaluation of fiat currencies like the US dollar, we are on the very last leg of the fiat monetary system. The system is crumbling from the inside out, almost completely crippled by reckless spending and borrowing. In stark contrast to the easily inflated fiat system are hard assets like Bitcoin. The leading cryptocurrency not only has a fixed supply, but the periodic halving event also helps control supply and prevent inflation and devaluation. In addition, Bitcoin has been one of the best performing assets against the balance sheets of central banks, especially the Federal Reserves. The more these banks inflate and devalue their respective fiat currencies, the better Bitcoin performs measured against these currencies and balance sheets. However, the main clincher is that Lepard believes central banks are about to unleash a torrent of money printing on the global economy, much more than we witnessed during previous crises, including the Great Financial Crisis and the pandemic. This means higher Bitcoin prices, and Lepard is predicting at least $350,000 Bitcoin when the printing begins, and over $1 million per coin as the situation worsens. We will now bring you clips from Lepard's recent interview with Stephan Livera. But before we do, please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thank you and enjoy the video.
About 3 weeks ago, the U.S. government came out and announced the monthly deficit was $380 billion when the anticipated was $290. So it was $90 billion larger than what they thought. I mean, now you can't take the 380 and multiply it times 12 because it's lumpy. But if you did, that's $4.8 trillion deficit. I mean, we're clearly running a $2 trillion deficit, but I would say arguably it's even a bit larger than that. And there's always been a little bit of a disconnect between what they report as the deficit and the amount that the debt grows. They managed to sneak some stuff around and not run it through the P&L, the income statement, because the debt, if we run a $2 trillion deficit, the debt might grow $2.6 trillion. And I don't know where the other 0.6 came from, but the government's pretty good at kind of fiddling with the numbers. But yes, the point is that at a broad level, there is no discussion or thought in Washington, D.C. about how to address this problem. I thought it was extremely telling that, in the Kamala Trump debate, there was zero conversation about, the deficits and the debt and how it was going to be dealt with, and very similar last night in the Walz-Vance debate. So although there was a little talk about inflation, there was no talk about the U.S. fiscal situation, which is really, kind of mirroring the situation that we've seen before in developing countries. I mean, this is not, there's no mystery as to how this plays out and what happens. I mean, we've seen this pattern over hundreds of years in a lot of countries. We've just never seen it in the largest country with the world's reserve currency. And, I mean, Venezuela did this, and Zimbabwe did this, and, Brazil did this, and Argentina did it, and, a couple times, and, Poland has done it. There are a number of countries that have had, very serious, fiscal problems, and then they've led to trying to solve those problems by printing money. But they were smaller countries. They weren't the world's reserve currency. And of course, now we've got the world's reserve currency, following that same playbook. And as you and I both know and agree, it's not going to end well. There are a lot of possible endings, but, inflation is almost baked into any one of them, absent, letting just an enormous structure of debt collapse and having a situation that, looks similar to 1929, where there's all kinds of default everywhere. So, and I think that at the end of the day, the central bankers won't allow that. They have a printing press and they intend to use it, and they will use it. They've shown us that multiple times. And I think they view inflation as a lesser of two evils, with the other evil being, deflationary collapse. It appears to be that the Washington, D.C. choice has been, let's pretend this problem doesn't exist. That's how they've decided to deal with it. And, that's fine. And on a day-to-day basis, the country keeps running, right? I mean, GDP just grew reasonably well, and, inflation has come down, not as much as they say, but it has come down. And unemployment, while it's creeping up, it hasn't exploded upward. I mean, the economy is kind of bumping along. The U.S. stock market's close to record highs. So, to an outside observer, you would say, well, there's nothing terribly broken right now, except for the fact we're running these huge deficits. And, so I think that DC won't react until they're quote unquote forced to react, and it's very similar. I remember 2006, 7, and 8. I mean, you had to be blind not to kind of realize there was a housing bubble taking place. And yet, Bernanke and others were saying, no, we've never had no, there's no problem here. Houses have never turned down on a nationwide basis, et cetera, which was wrong. It was a lie, because in 1929, from 1929 to 1931, houses fell 67% in value. So when you have a real significant economic downturn, a deflationary impulse, housing can go down a lot, but they didn't admit that at the time. And I think that's the same thing here. And so my view is, at some point, we will be back, quote unquote, in crisis conditions. And, then that will justify the next big print that will take the government, balance sheet from, the 7 trillion that they managed to reduce it to, down from, say, 9. The next one will take us up to 20 or more.
Lepard is certain that when this next round of printing starts, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet will more than double from its current state to over $20 trillion, spurring a rapid increase in the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. His $20 trillion estimate is quite popular among expert analysts and other sound money advocates. Last year, technology investor Balaji Srinivasan made similar predictions when explaining the rationale behind his $1 million Bitcoin price prediction. Srinivasan, an early Bitcoin investor and former chief technology officer at crypto exchange Coinbase, predicted the US dollar would enter a hyperinflationary death spiral, and the US government would print trillions of dollars almost overnight to try to stop the dam from bursting, but nothing would suffice. Lepard holds very similar views, and like Balaji, he believes the bursting of the dam would be highly beneficial for Bitcoin, gold, and silver. Here are more clips from the interview.
I kind of have looked at the cycles, and I've looked at the power law, and I think on the next ramp, I think we're somewhere short of what I call the next thing I call the big print. Okay, so the next big print is going to come when something breaks, maybe the bond market, maybe the stock market, whatever it is, and the government realizes that they've got to, or else everything's going to collapse. That's coming. Outside date on that is 18 months. Inside date on that's tomorrow. Medium date on that, 6 months maybe, 6 to 9 months. I think when that occurs, Bitcoin will go and exceed the power law. We'll get a 2 standard deviation move above, and we'll pump to 300, 350. I think gold will probably run to, now I'm beginning to think 4,000 or 5,000. I mean, it's getting closer to 3, right? I used to say I'd run to 3. Now 3 is too low. I think silver will probably run to, 75 to 100. Okay. Following that, my suspicion is there's a possibility that we get such severe deflation that even in light of the big print, everything still kind of quote unquote collapses, a la 29, and there'll be an enormous scramble for liquidity. And the Fed will do everything it can to provide liquidity, but absent literally sending out checks in the form of UBI to everybody, the economy will be collapsing. And this is kind of David Hunter's scenario too. And in that case, the Bitcoin will probably correct from that 200 or 300 peak back down to 85 or 100, and gold will correct. Gold will have a serious correction too, because we'll have a really deflationary impulse. I think then the next move is you'll get quote unquote the bigger print, right? Okay, the economy is totally collapsing. Nobody has any money. The prices of everything are falling. We're literally going to do UBI where we're going to send every family a check for $50,000 to kind of keep things going. And to me, that one will be the last one. And at that point in time, Bitcoin will go to 1 million, gold will go to, 20, 30, 40,000, and effectively the currency will fail. And there'll have to be some kind of political meeting of the minds to solve the problem. And I kind of see the time frame on that as probably 2027, maybe as late as 2030, 2031. I mean, if you look at this as the fourth turning and you look at the average length of fourth turnings, you start at 2008, which is what I do, and you add the average length, you kind of get into the late 2020 period, like 27, 8, 9 kind of period, 2028.
I see.
I mean, at some point, I think if absent, intelligent and, I mean, by the way, at any point in time, all of this could be stopped by a monetary reset and responsible behavior out of Washington, D.C. But I think absent a crisis, I just don't see how that gets done. I don't think that happens. So I think, sadly, we're going to have to drive toward a crisis. And I think the crisis will be, as I've described, a few years out. And then at that point in time, people will be so frustrated, so angry, so hurt, so broke that a politician who stands up and says, hey, you know what? The problem really here is we don't have sound money and we've got to go to a sound money standard. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's how it's going to be. And we're going to reset and start over. That person will win overwhelmingly. I mean, I know some think the U.S. will break up and this, that, and the other. I think no, there's much more likely to be just kind of a constitutional convention that kind of tries to reset the rules, and hopefully the people involved in that will do a good job, so that we can put the world back on a sound money footing. And I mean, once that happens, boy, things are going to get great.
For years, sound money advocates like Lawrence Lepard have warned the government to act swiftly and stop spending so recklessly. For these experts, there are 3 paths ahead of the U.S. government: a default, an austerity program, and more printing. To begin the 2025 fiscal year, another $204 trillion was added to the already massive national debt in a single day. Certainly, the U.S. government is nowhere ready for an austerity program, nor can it afford a default as it relies on being able to borrow massively to keep running. This means more borrowing, more reckless spending, and an eventual collapse. This is why experts like Lepard consistently emphasize the importance of hard assets like Bitcoin and gold. Please share your thoughts on Lepard's price predictions for Bitcoin, gold, and silver in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.